In this video, we will walk you through on how to set up a login node for SSH access from the public internet to your servers in the SOSCIP Cloud. Virtual machine instances in a project will, by default, be able to reach the public internet, but will not be reachable from the public internet. It is possible to make a machine reachable from the public network by assigning it a floating IP address and modifying some access and security rules. Floating IPs allow computers on the public internet to make inbound connections to your instances in the SOSCIP Cloud. Without it, only outbound connections can be made from your instance. They are called floating IPs because you are free to move these IP addresses from instance to instance as you see fit. By default, each project's quota for floating IPs is limited, which means that you won't be able to assign a floating IP to every single instance within your project. To that effect, we advise to make the most of your floating IP addresses by setting up a login node. An SSH login node allows you to use a single floating IP address to enable access to your project's internal cloud network. By establishing an SSH connection to your login node, and from there opening another SSH connection to your destination node, you will be able to access any SSH-enabled system in your project without needing dedicated floating IP addresses for each instance. In this example, we have created a basic Red Hat 7 instance that will be our login node, and two extra instances named Target Node 1 and Target Node 2 that will act as your instances that you normally work with. Since creating a login node will consume a small resource on your quota, we advise to use the most basic flavor when creating the node. For this example, we are using Compute G3X1 as the flavor for the login node. Finally, we attach a floating IP address to the login node by going to the Actions column for your login node, select Associate Floating IP, then select the IP from the drop-down menu and click on Associate. This will add a floating IP to your login node, which is a public IP address. As you can see now, we have a public IP address on our login node. The idea again is to establish an SSH connection from your computer to the login node, and then you will be able to SSH from your login node to any of your servers within your project. Users must have their public keys on the login node and also on the target servers. At this point, we assume that you are familiar with the use of public and private SSH keys. We also have an entire section explaining how to set up and use key pairs. Provided that your public keys are set up on all three servers, if you are connecting from a Linux or Apple system, open a terminal session from your computer. You're going to type the following command to create an SSH connection to your login node. SSH-A, the name of the user, for the example we're using root, and the IP address, the floating IP address of your login node. Hit enter and now you are connected to your login node. The -A argument enables SSH agent forwarding, which allows our local agent to reach through an existing SSH connection and authenticate on a remote server without the need of leaving our private keys in the login node. It doesn't write to disk or export our private keys. Once logged into your login node, now you're able to SSH to one of your target servers. Type SSH and then username and IP of one of your target servers. For target node 1, we copy the IP. Then you hit enter and now you will be connected to your target node server number 1. You will then be connected to your target server. When you finish working on the target server, or if you wish to connect to a different target server, type exit to go back to your login node, and then again we can SSH to your next target server. you can type SSH, username, and then we will grab the IP address of your target node number 2. And as you can see now, you are connected to your target node server number 2. If you are using a Windows system, to connect to your login node, we advise using a software called PuTTY. You can download PuTTY installer from putty.org. The installer will install PuTTY plus some utilities that we will need to use, like PuTTYGen and Pagent. Once installed, we need to convert your private SSH key to the PPK file format used by PuTTY. To do so, first open PuTTYGen, click on Conversion, and select Import Key. Once your key is loaded, leave everything on default, click on Save Private Key. Next, open Pagent, click on Add Key, browse and select your PPK key file that we converted before, click on Open, and this will load your private SSH key. Finally, open up PuTTY, and you will need to type the floating IP of your login node. Then on the left-hand side menu, select SSH, Auth, and check the option Allow Agent Forwarding. Then click on Open to establish your SSH connection to your login node. From there, all you have to do is connect to one of your target nodes. And as you can see, now you're connected to one of your target nodes. You can go back to your login node by typing exit. Connecting to your second target node. An alternative to PuTTY for Windows users is MobaXterm. To use MobaXterm to log into your login node, first you need to enable SSH agent forwarding. Go to Settings, Configuration, select SSH, and then you need to make sure that SSH agent is enabled, and also forward SSH agents. Next, you need to load your private SSH key, the one saved on the PPK format, and select OK to save the changes. It will ask you to restart the program. Hit yes. And now you can go to Sessions, SSH, and then type in your floating IP address, which is the IP address of your login node. The username, for this example we are using root. Port should stay on 22. Select OK. You're now connected to your login node. From there you can SSH to your target nodes. Now you are connected to target node number 1. You can exit to go back to your login node. And then let's try to connect to the next target node. And now you are connected to target node number 2. On the SOSCIP web interface, you can find written instructions on how to set up your login node by selecting Documentation, Configuration, and Login Node. You can also create a new ticket by going to Support, New Help Request, and selecting Submit a new help request if you need support. Thank you.